Wenceslas Square, Prague. A grey city of grey people. A sombre city of 1,000 spires. The first impression, which remains, is that this is a gloomy, unlit place. From the sky, every Western city, however ordinary, at night looks like magic, like fairyland. Prague, there are very few lights indeed. And the main streets, even of this capital, are ill-lit, underlit. There's very little interference by officials, for foreigners at any rate, or police. There's very little evidence of police. The only time we were stopped was at a roadblock. We were stopped twice, one dawn. We'd made a start about 5 in the morning, and there, ahead of us on the road with the red lights going, some armed soldiers it looked like. They turned out to be police. A rather fearsome sight. We pulled up, braced for the worst. But what they were doing was they were checking the brake lights, the side lights, and the headlights of our bus. We went on a little further, and there was yet another block. Well, I said at the time, at 5 o'clock in the morning, in the dark, before dawn, on an outlandish place, miles from anywhere, what would they have done if the brake lights hadn't been working? Well, somebody said, shot him. Well, that was a joke, wasn't it? There's another rather curious anomaly. I went to a Prague nightclub the other night, in my official capacity as an observer. You know, we never sleep. And I strolled back through this square at 3 in the morning, unconcerned and evidently quite safe. Now, this is regarded by us in the West as a poor city in a police state. And yet, you can walk around at night and you're quite safe. Now, in New York or Washington, these rich cities in the land of the proud and the free, you would not walk about at night in that carefree way, because you'd be mugged or slugged or robbed, very likely. You might well be in some trouble. It's strange, isn't it, that one should feel safer here in this eastern capital. There's another remarkable thing to a Westerner, and that is the very small number of cars about. You can park anywhere here and welcome. There's no sign yet of that Western affliction, the dreaded creeping traffic warden. When I arrived here, I brought with me a bundle of British papers, and the customs didn't seem to mind. I could bring them in. There was no problem about that. But when you get here, you can't buy them. There are no Western papers, no Western books, no Western magazines here on sale at all. Though I'm told you can have them sent to you through the mail. They don't censor them, they don't stop them. They can come in if you can get the foreign currency to buy them, but of course they haven't got it. They let them through without hindrance. The only paper in the English language on sale here is the Daily Worker. Well, this does its best as a political broadsheet, but you could hardly accuse it of being a newspaper. And if you need papers, as I do, for entertainment and sustenance, well, reading the Daily Worker is like eating cotton wool. I was here 20 years ago, and the place to me doesn't seem to have changed at all. There are a few workers' blocks going up on the outskirts of the capital. Otherwise, the city, the country, doesn't seem to have moved. The people seem about as shabby as they were, but they're an agreeable people. We were filming at Karlovy Vary, and one maternal matron who was with us pointed out a boy as he went by, and she said, take a picture of him. He has a good socialist face. They're Slavic, of course, and cultured, as you well might expect from the countrymen of Smetana, Dvořák, and Kafka. They're unemotional. They're the least emotional race, they say, in Europe, second only to the English. What a monstrous allegation that is, dismissing all our inner fires in that light-hearted way. They dislike the Russians, it seems to me, although Russian is a required language at Czech universities. They loathe the Germans, of course. They're influenced, perhaps unconsciously, by the Americans. The American astronaut Scott Carpenter is on one of their stamps. And this seems rather a generous gesture to me, and not one, I think, you'd find in the United States. We don't seem to affect them at all, I'm afraid, one way or the other. Apart from that well-known British cultural influence and export, the Beatles. Those boys have done our popularity more good than you can imagine. To get money from abroad, they've adopted a system of money vouchers, which they exchange for foreign currency, and these are called tuseks. There are tusek stores around this capital where you can buy anything, Western goods, scents, good shoes, good clothes. But you buy them only for tusek vouchers. which, as I say, are exchanged for foreign currency. Now, each of these two-sec stores is full of Czechs. I thought they'd just be foreigners there. It is full of Czechs. And as they are an honest people, it's hard to see where they've got the foreign currency from. I suppose it comes as gifts from friends and relatives abroad. Otherwise, the shops here are quite remarkably dreary. The goods are shoddy. They come from state factories. And since all shops are state shops, they don't compete with each other. They're not trying to sell. They're not trying to attract custom. They don't bother about lighting. So the shops are either closed and empty or open, possibly, and with very little in the window. There's no advertising. It's a great relief to come to a country, the only country I've been to so far in the world, I think, where I've seen no advertisements for Coke. The food here is excellent, and there seems to be plenty of it. There's plenty in the shops, lots of sausages, lots of meat, though I've no doubt it's quite expensive for the Czechs. Nevertheless, it seems they eat well, and they certainly drink well. There's vodka, of course, Slivovitz, which is the Czech plum brandy, which just lifts a small part of the top of your head off. And the beer is first-rate, of course, Pilsner beer. And it's cheaper, curious enough, than tea. You can get a vast glass of foaming beer for less than you pay for a small cup of inadequate tea, and a third of the price you pay for a cup of very, very bad coffee. So how do the Czechs face Christmas? Well, I think the most indicative shop window here in Prague is just over there. It's a shop window of Christmas presents. And in this window, the most extravagant and large basket, the kind of basket that gets taken up to be presented to ballet dancers and opera singers on the stage, this splendid basket, this most expensive present, contains, tied up with ribbon, a bottle of tomato ketchup, a tin of instant coffee, some canned fruit juice, a collection of supermarket groceries. Well, I'm sorry this has had to be so quick. Our next report from Poland, from Warsaw, from Prague, from Czechoslovakia. Good night.